Welcome to the Mississippi Library Commission's Summer Library Program Early Literacy Webinar for Adventure Begins at Your Library. My name is Dee Hare, and I'm the Director of the Northeast Regional Library System. I have 13 branches spread over 4 counties, so for many years now, I have been helping my branches condense down all the great Summer Library Program ideas that they come across into things that are doable for all sizes of libraries. During today's webinar, I hope that you will also learn lots of great ideas and tips to take back to your branch for a fabulous summer library program this year. Here's an agenda of what we'll be going over today. We're going to start by talking about what early literacy means, why you should be having programming specifically for this age group at your library, and most importantly, how to do that. We'll talk about the importance of early literacy, Every Child Ready to Read's 6 early literacy skills, the components of an early literacy story time, which includes 5 best practices, before moving on to the 2024 theme interpretations and specific program ideas and book recommendations. Before we begin, I have just a few housekeeping items to tell you. I have prepared several documents to go along with this presentation. There's a copy of the Early Literacy Activity Log created by the Collaborative Summer Library Program, which can also be found in the manual. There's a sheet of my top 10 tips for reading aloud to children. You're welcome to use this however you like. We share it at my branches with parents and caregivers all the time to give them tips. I'm going to be talking about the Every Child Ready to Read initiative. So I've taken ALA's information, which is not always easy to make into a printout, and I have made it into a printout for you. There'll be one with the early literacy 6 skills and one with the 5 best practices. Finally, there's a document that has a bibliography of all the book titles I will use. I do want to give a special thank you to our technology coordinator at Northeast Regional Library, Shane Castile. He did all the graphics for these handouts and did a wonderful job for us. When I first learned about early literacy, my son was a toddler. And as I was learning about the concept, I was very happy to see that what my husband and I were already doing, which was born of our natural love of books and reading, was exactly what we needed to be doing. We were also very lucky that he went to a fabulous preschool that worked through all these concepts with their kids in a very fun and enjoyable way. So I know on a personal level that these things not only work, but have a lasting impact on children. I love to use pictures of my family in my webinars, so you're about to see a lot of Cole during his early literacy years. So what does early literacy mean? In the past, the word literacy, meaning the ability to read and write, wasn't used in connection with children's abilities until after a child had reached school age. But we now know that a child's literacy skills actually begin to develop at birth, and these skills are formed through the child's early nonverbal and verbal contact with those around them. The first 5 years of a child's life, before formal schooling ever begins, are crucially important to their brain's development and their long-term success as they go through life. So early literacy refers to the skills a child needs to know to be successful at reading and writing before they actually learn to read and write. A lot of these skills involve their brain's development, but there also is a physical component to early literacy. Children need to learn how to hold pencils, or in the case of this first picture, a marker, correctly. You can see Cole is not holding it correctly to be able to write well, although he has managed to copy out his name. This is a skill that needs to be learned by children. But first, children have to learn to make a pinching and grasping motion with their fingers. So in this second picture, the teacher has outlined a huge letter C in glue, and Cole is arranging breakfast cereal to form the letter to get help using that motion. The benefits to promoting early literacy activities are tremendous. These activities are essential for children's continuing brain development as it stimulates their brain to grow. It builds their language skills by giving them the language foundation they need to understand how to communicate with others. These activities increase their vocabulary as they are exposed to new words. and boost their self-confidence as they get positive feedback about what they are doing. It makes them want to learn how to read for themselves, which helps to motivate their thirst for knowledge. Early literacy activities builds children's comprehension and concentration skills as they learn to sit still and listen to stories being read to them. It helps to improve their social and emotional skills as they learn how to react to various life situations and how to talk through their emotions and feelings. And finally, it encourages children's creativity, which introduces them to the power of their own imagination. So this brings us to why you should want to add early literacy programming not only to your summer library program, but to other times of the year as well. Early literacy activities are a way to serve a population that's already coming to your library. This picture shows one family, and you can see that the children's ages range from infant, who is paying very close attention, to a 5 or 6-year-old. If you offer programming that's only tailored to children 6 to 11, this parent is probably still bringing all these children to that program. So having special early literacy programs gives you a chance to target these kids who are already there and to offer them specialized programs just for their needs. Early literacy programming benefits your community. It's in all of our best interests to help children in our communities thrive. They are going to be the ones becoming members of our police and fire departments, our doctors, nurses, and medical caregivers, our bank tellers, our plumbers, and electricians. We need them to be the best they can be. Early literacy efforts also help young children lay the groundwork to become lifelong readers. ALA has designed a parent education initiative called Every Child Ready to Read that encourages public libraries to educate and teach parents and caregivers how to support their child's growing early literacy development. This program identifies 6 early literacy skills to describe children learning to become ready to read. The first one is print motivation. This is loving books and wanting to read. How do we get kids to this stage? It's easy, by reading to them every chance we get. We can have our regular scheduled story hours each week and our fabulous summer library programs and any other early literacy activities and other targeted groups. But I also encourage you to spontaneously read to children in your branch at other times as well. My branches, like I'm sure many of you, are having problems getting kids to their story times. The librarians have moved the time around to try to find a good time, but they aren't coming in the mornings, they aren't coming in the afternoons, they don't come at night or on Saturdays. Nothing is working. So one librarian decided that when people ask her when story time is, she turns around and asks them when they want to come. It doesn't matter if it's a family of 2 or 10, she's letting parents and caregivers tell her when they're coming to the library anyway, and she's conducting a story time for each family directly. I've started calling it on-demand story time, and that's how we're advertising it for that branch. I used a similar technique when I was a branch manager. If children were misbehaving while their parents were trying to use the library, I would get those kids, and instead of fussing at them, I would ask them if they wanted to hear a story. They never told me no. When children misbehave, it is often a way to get attention, and this technique worked wonders for cutting down on discipline problems. The second early literacy skill is phonological awareness, which is just understanding that words are made up of smaller sounds. Reading to them grows this skill, as does talking to them and answering their questions. The third skill is vocabulary, which is being aware of what things are called and knowing the words for things, which they learn by associating the spoken and later the written word with pictures. One of the ways we do this is by constantly reinforcing to them the names of things when we're reading out loud. We need to point to things when we say them. So if the page talks about a duck, we point to the duck. And then we mix it up by seeing if they can answer questions, such as, what is that? What color is it? What sound does it make? The fourth skill is narrative skills, and there are several parts to this skill. The first is being able to tell a chain of events, which they learn by hearing stories and then moving on to retelling those stories to you. It also means being able to answer questions or retelling key details about a story with help. Asking children questions about the story will help with this. But another part of this skill is transitioning to their making up their own stories to go along with what's happening in the pictures. I'm sure most of you recognize this Complete Adventures of Curious George book. It's been around for a long time. Cole loved it so much that we had 2 copies, one for our house and one for Grandma's. We read it so many times that Cole could take it and go through each page, making up the story of what was happening based on what he remembered and the illustrations. He read me to sleep on several occasions. This was an essential part of him learning how to use narrative skills. Another part of the skill is when they progress to pretending to read because they have the story completely memorized. This is probably my absolute favorite picture of Cole during his preschool years. He was 3 when this one was taken, and he's holding a little bitty board book. It was old. It was my youngest brother's at one time, just a generic one from the dollar store. And it had 1 sentence per page. This is a bear. The bear is smelling a flower. And Cole memorized it pretty fast, and he took it to school one day to read to his friends. And just look at those faces. All those kids are totally all in and engaged with being read to. I just love it. The next skill is print awareness. This is understanding the physical parts of the book, the front cover, the back cover, how to turn pages, how to hold the book, that words and pages are read from left to right in English and from top to bottom. So how do we teach this? One of the things we can do is have plenty of sturdy board books for even the youngest children to handle and touch. We can't make children think that books are so precious that they are afraid to touch them. We taught with them how to read books, and we explained the parts to them, and then we let them turn the page whenever possible. The last skill is letter knowledge. This is knowing that words are made up of letters and the letters represent sounds. So how do we do this one? Children learn their letters through strict repetition and constant reinforcement. So if we're reading a story about the moon or singing a song about it, we talk about how moon starts with M, and we ask them, what other things start with M? What does the sound make? All of these pictures show Cole working on letter recognition and working with the fine motor skills of pinching and grabbing. There's a sheet with a W and a picture of a worm, and he's practicing writing his W's. In the middle picture, he's using Play-Doh and laying out pieces to make an A on a laminated sheet. In the last 2, he's using breakfast cereal to make the shape of a letter and gummies to make the word go. So you'll want to remember this go activity especially, as it can work to use with any part of your early literacy programming this year. The Every Child Ready to Read initiative recommends 5 best practices, and these are going to be the blueprints for what you want to include in your early literacy programs. You'll want to read stories, sing songs, talk to the kids, give them paper, crayons, markers, or pencils to let them practice writing, or use some of the letter recognition or pinching and grasping activities instead, and then giving them time to just play. You might be thinking, well, what about crafts? I love crafts. Well, I do too. So you just want to look for craft activities that help reinforce hand-eye coordination and using their fingers effectively. I love open-ended crafts where you just give them supplies to make whatever they want. I also love having free drawing time. Just give them paper, crayons, markers, or whatever, and let them draw pictures. Early literacy covers children from babies and infants to toddlers and preschoolers from birth to age 5. That's a pretty large group developmentally wise. So when you start thinking about how to do an early literacy component to your summer library program, you can start by thinking about your regulars and who's coming to your programs anyway. If you're seeing more 1 to 2-year-olds, plan more for that group. Or if it's 4 to 5-year-olds, plan for that age. The Collaborative Summer Library Manual has a great early literacy section that gives a lot of detailed information about planning early literacy programs in general, and then programs tailored to the summer library theme. I highly recommend you look at it. So depending on the attention span of your group, you may not get all 5 practices in during each program, and that's okay. Do at least 2 to 3 per program, and then the next time, concentrate on the ones you missed. First, of course, you're going to be reading to your kids. And you'll be doing the talk component by asking them questions and encouraging them to participate in any call and response text the book offers. You'll want to have some kind of musical component, such as a song, a chant, or a finger play for them to do with you. The manual has a lot of them starting on page 25 this year. I really like using 5 Hungry Ants. We're going on a bug hunt, or you can use the original bear hunt. I am walking, and row, row, row your boat for this year's theme. To help them with writing skills, give them a chance to practice writing letters, numbers, and their name. I love having free write or draw time, as I mentioned, so just give them some paper or anything to write with. And at the end of each program, I suggest you let them have some free playtime to play with their storytime friends and any things you have, such as puppets, blocks, sensory items, or any of the other activities themed to the book you've just read. Here are some suggestions for early literacy activities that can work with any theme program. Catching bubbles, which gets kids up and moving around to work their sillies out. This is great, especially if you have a safe outdoor space you can do it in. But as you can see here, they're doing it inside. They have rubber mats down on the floor, but you can also put down cheap plastic table covers to protect your flooring. Popping bubble wrap is always fun for kids and a lot of adults too. This activity works on that pinching and grasping motion that kids need to learn. Parachute play is always fun. You can just let them move the parachute around, or you can incorporate beach balls to throw up in the air. Or this year, you can let kids place their stuffed animals or even stuffed vehicles, nothing hard, of course, on the parachute and tell everyone that their animals or vehicles are going on a trip. You can ask them questions as they move the animals around, like, where do you think they're going? And they can chant, go, 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 or sing one of the songs as they're doing this activity. You could also use, for this year, The Wheels on the Bus as another fun song. If you don't have a parachute, don't worry. I've used this with a large bed sheet or an inexpensive plastic table cover. Those are very versatile for a variety of purposes to have on hand. Having play food for kids to play with is an easy activity for them. Grasping and moving these small objects helps with their hand-eye coordination, and you're still working on that grasping motion. Children love to play with shaving cream. It's a little messy, but it does wash off easily. I suggest using the plain old-fashioned white stuff like Barbasol. In this middle picture, the teacher had spread a thick layer on their table, and they were first practicing writing letters and numbers in it with their fingers before she let them have some free playtime with it. And the first picture with a cupcake, the teacher tinted the shaving cream with a little food coloring and let them use it as a paint. So that's another fun activity. The final picture shows the kids having fun with hula hoops. Hula hoops are very inexpensive to keep around, and you can use them with older kids as they are intended, but you can also use them with the younger ones to practice walking a small obstacle course. That's what they're doing in this picture. You can also use them whether sitting in a circle or standing as a way to teach personal space so that each child stays in their circle. Now, finally, we get to this year's theme. Adventure begins at your library. Adventure and exploring are the most obvious interpretations, but there are several interesting subcategories you can use. Travel, road trips, moving, nighttime adventures, nature adventures, and camping trips. You can adventure and explore when you're learning a new skill, especially something like learning a new language, learning yoga, or learning how to ride a bike. Those are just the ones I'm going to focus on, but the possibilities are endless, and you can make them fit any type of program. Finally, kids explore and process their lives using the power of their imaginations. So I'll give some examples of that in general, and specifically superheroes, which is always fun to do with kids. The Collaborative Summer Library Program has several early literacy activity sheets you can use this year. I really like the Adventure Bingo and the Activity Log. You can use these several ways. They can be passive activities where you hand them out and the families do the activities on their own and bring the sheet back to you for a sticker or small incentive. Or you can plan to work through all these activities during your programs, which would be fairly easy to do. I have two general early literacy titles to share with you that you can use with any program. Sensory activities where you have things that children can touch and feel are a great early literacy activity. If you have this picture book or one like it, this one is The Very Hungry Caterpillar's Garden Friends. It has several textures built into the book. The cover has a smooth, kind of puffy plastic feel. The cat's fur is fluffy, of course, and the frog has a bumpy texture. This title also gives you a great way to talk about the colors of things. You can see from the text that it also has a call and response feature built in where you ask kids a question about each animal that prompts them to give you a response. Some verbal, like meowing like a cat, or some movement where they hop like a frog. It's really cute. I just recently met this author who's from Tupelo in North Mississippi. She's an educator who writes as Raquel Rose and has recently published Tiny Hungry Troll. It's a really cute story that will allow you to introduce social emotional learning activities with young kids by talking about their feelings and especially anger. She's available for doing story time, and there's her contact information. As I mentioned earlier, I have 13 branches, and some of them are run by a single staff person and only open 10 to 15 hours per week. So I've always felt one of the things I could do to support them was to help them pick out the best ideas that will be the easiest to implement. The titles I'm going to talk about today are not always the most recent titles, but most of them are no more than 5 years old. And as I said earlier, they are listed on the additional resources PDF. And even if you don't have these exact books, you'll get an idea of how the theme can be implemented with similar titles. First, we're going to be talking about having adventures, exploring new places, and traveling. Digosaurus Explorer by Michael Waite is a very colorful and vibrant board book that fits into both the exploration part of this year's theme and the importance of using your imagination. It has rhyming text that has plenty of action words that kids can help you say, such as honking and roaring, as well as things that can act out, like stepping over a fallen tree. All the dinos are very colorful, so this title is a really good one where you can ask children which colors they recognize. You can tie in activities with blocks, as you see here, and things that they can build and stack. And it's always fun for them to be able to knock it all down when they're finished building. A more sensory-friendly activity, though, would be to crumble up gray or brown paper to be rocks, especially if you bring in buckets or sand pails or construction vehicles for them to play with the rocks. There's several textures throughout this book that you can introduce to young children: sand, water, rocks, wood, grass. You can have small examples of each of them for them to touch. Some more fun board books are these new series by Baby Scientists and Nerdy Babies. You can combine them with the Penguinonaut book by Marcy Colleen for space travel story time. Kids can pretend to put on a spacesuit, climb into a rocket, walk in space, and float around, so there's plenty of movement for them to do. You can make cutouts or print out large pictures of the planets to show them, or let that be your craft project. Cut out big round circles of paper and let them draw their own planet. Penguinonaut has simple text, so it's great for beginning picture book listeners. There are lots of call and response places kids can chime in on the text, counting down the liftoff, yelling blast off, and so on. Orville the penguin builds his own spaceship out of things he borrows. So this title gives you a great opportunity to bring in cardboard boxes and let your kids play in them and imagine they are in a rocket too. A lot of today's books have main characters turning cardboard boxes into themes, so you can use this activity several times. The basic shapes of Orville's rocket, a triangle, a rectangle, and a circle, give you a place to talk about different shapes. Another fun craft for this age group could be to cut out some of these shapes in a variety of colors, so you can talk about colors too, and let them glue them together and make their own paper rocket. Orville shakes up a soda bottle to use to power his rocket. So if you're really brave and have space to do it outside, you could also demonstrate the Mentos and soda trick, which is always very popular with everyone. There are several titles in the Nerdy Baby series available in both board books and a small picture book format. This one takes children on an exploration of the oceans. The book asks questions in the text, so there's a lot of built-in call and response. You can pair it with The Greatest Adventure by Tony Piedra. This title features traveling to different locations around the world, but also is the story of a little boy using his imagination to turn his neighborhood into various adventures. In this spread, he sails a paper boat in water running down his street, but what he's imagining is that he's on the high seas. You could translate this into an activity by leading children and parents through folding simple paper boats. And if you have the space for water play, you could also provide a basin of water for them to play with. The end papers for this title have these colorful postcard illustrations, so that would be a great art activity to mimic. Provide postcard-sized squares of paper for children to decorate and maybe even address to someone. Here are a few more activities you can use with any of the titles that we talk about that feature water. In the first picture, you can see just the edge of a little plastic pool that you could use if you have space outside to let them play in a little water. You can also see that they use plastic bins that hold just a little bit of water. Cole and his friends have lined up rubber duckies to play with, so if you get some in different colors, this will be another way to introduce color reinforcement. In the second photo, they're using a pie plate of water and seeing how water dilutes color with a medicine dropper and some food coloring. This activity is another one that works on that pinching and grasping motion, although it would be fun for all ages. Next, we have The Big Adventure by Alina Ellis. In this story, bear, fox, moose, and chicken want to go on an adventure. With these type of stories that mention other habitats, you can ask kids to think about each location and imagine what they might find. The title has a page where all the characters consult a map, so you can let your kids draw their own as an art project. A lot of this year's titles include maps, so this is an activity you could use with several of them, like with the cardboard boxes. One subcategory for thinking about travel and adventure is the road trip. And who better to go on a road trip with than Mo Willems' Elephant and Piggy? This series is great to use for all ages. There's a lot of yelling and a lot of physical action that children can act out. The text has a lot of repetition, so that you can see that allows children to respond along with you. You can even divide kids into two sides, and one side responds like elephant, and the other one responds as piggy. This one in particular, Let's Go for a Drive, has several elements you can turn into further activities. They get out a map, so you can have your kids draw maps. They get sunglasses and umbrellas, so you can have some, either real ones or printouts, for children to wave around during this parts of the story. You can even hand them out before you start and let the children produce them when it's called for in the text. At the very end of the story, they play pirates, so that gives you an excellent way to tie in crafts and activities around a pirate theme. Remember when we had the Oceans of Possibility theme from 2022? There's a lot of pirate stuff in that manual, including this fun walk the plank activity that you can do with a blue plastic tablecloth. The bottom picture is a treasure map my son made for that year. Any of these water and ocean activities would pair well with any adventure story you pick that's set with water. You can pair Let's Go for a Drive with The Pickwick's Picnic, a counting adventure by Carol Brindler. The Pickwick family is going on a small road trip to escape the city, so kids can help count what they see as the story progresses. Here you can see they see 2 blue scooters, 3 squeaky Jeeps, and there's lots of other vehicles for them to encounter. The story counts up and then back down again. Their trip is interrupted by construction that has shut down the bridge out of the city, so they improvise and make a picnic for everyone trapped in the traffic. You could bring a blanket and picnic stuff to have a picnic with your kids after you read, even if it's just juice boxes and goldfish crackers. I've always used the simple, inexpensive plastic tablecloths from the dollar stores as the picnic blanket to help with spills. Having to move is another type of adventure. I love Ryan T. Higgins. He is one of our family's all time favorites. And Bruce's big move, Bruce decides to get away from the chaos in his house by searching for a new one. He and the geese look at several locations that you can talk about with your kids. All of them also give you a chance to incorporate texture. You can have sand, bark, leaves, and so on for the children to touch and play with afterward. In one spread, the mice have made a cardboard box castle. So this one is another one that you can incorporate, giving kid boxes to turn into something else. Bad Bye Goodbye by Deborah Underwood is another book that's great for those just transitioning to picture books. The text is very simple. It's usually only 2 words per page that change from bad things, like this bad truck, to new things to good things. This title gives you another chance to talk with kids about their feelings, as the main character goes from being very mad to sad to acceptance and then finally being happy. Nighttime adventures is another fun adventure category, as even normal things around you are more exciting at night. All Aboard the Moonlight Train by Kristen Crow has rhyming text that's always fun to read, and each page ends with a refrain, all aboard the midnight train, that kids can repeat back with you. On this journey, they see all kinds of different animals, like giraffes and hippos, and this beautiful lion. So you can talk about all the different kinds of animals they see. You could let them bring their stuffies or have stuffed representations of some of the animals for kids to play with. For a craft activity, you could ask them to draw their favorite animal from the story or one they would have liked to have seen on a moonlight train journey. You can use some of the nighttime stories as a pajama story time for a day or even a nighttime program. Kids can wear their PJs and bring their stuffed animals. I had a branch once that let their kids leave their stuffed animals overnight to see what they got up to when the library was closed. When they came back to pick up their stuffies, the librarian showed them the pictures of all the mischievous fun they had had. This picture shows the librarians and the stuffies finally getting some sleep after all that fun. It was a really cute activity. The second photo is of a parade from when I worked as a branch librarian. We had parades often during summer reading program. The kids would exit the meeting room and sing and clap as they walked around the library. They loved it, and even the other patrons in the library, I always thought it was really cute to see the kids having fun. Here are several more great night stories. I put these in the night category, but some of them could work just as easily if you're focusing on imagination or exploring other places. The Boy in the Blue Moon by Sarah O'Leary has this beautiful blue palette that could lead a discussion about color, especially how different colors make you feel. You could plan ahead and tell your group to bring something blue to share after the story. The main character and their cat go for a walk outside at night and explore their surroundings and imagine new things like a lake and a boat to take them somewhere else. They even go to the moon, so you could use these with any of the other space and moon books you have. The Perfect Pillow by Eric Pender is another good transition book from board books to picture books. The text is simple with a lot of repetition that kids could repeat back to you. There's a lot of alliteration you can talk about, phrases like tossed and turned, held and hugged, so you can prompt your kids to come up with their own alliterative phrases. This little boy goes on an exploration outside, so you can use sensory objects like leaves, bark, twigs, cotton balls for clouds, and so on. Way Past Bedtime by Tara Lazar is a fun one for the older end, say maybe 3 to 5 of the early literacy range. Joseph is sure his parents are up to all kinds of fun things at night, so he makes a plan to stay up way past bedtime in all capital letters, to catch them having dance parties with celebrities and eating lots and lots of desserts. There are lots of things your kids can act out in this title, such as being pirates or medieval knights or ninjas. You could have your own dance party at the end with the desserts if you do snacks at your programs. After you read this story, one of the conversation starters you can use with your kids is to ask what they think their parents do at night while they are asleep. Adventures in nature, especially camping, are a fun component to this year's theme. These types of books give you a chance to talk about going on hikes, walking around your neighborhood, and all the animals you'll encounter. We put up a lot of story walks at area walking trails. So my branches will be having story times at the story walks where they will lead groups throughout the story. I also hope they can get with their local park service to see about having a small story time at those that have pavilions or other space that gives additional space to read stories and do a craft on site. This first title, All Aboard National Parks by Kevin and Haley Myers, is a board book that takes you to several of the most well-known national parks. The train motif that you can see in the background of this page continues throughout the book. At other times, the cars are shown with very bright colors, so you could cut rectangles out of colored paper, circles for wheels, and let children make their own train car. This is another title that you can decorate cardboard boxes to look like train cars for kids to play in, and use lots of sensory details like flowers, grass, barks, and twigs. You could pair it with Duck Stays in the Truck by Doreen Cronin and Betsy Leowen. I love Duck. He's another of my family's favorites. This is a ready-to-read title, but I like using these for a read aloud as well because they often use rhyming words to help kids get an ear for the flow of language. In this story, Farmer Brown, the animals, and even his brother Bob are going camping. You can see they consult a map, so here's another opportunity for kids to draw one. In their case, they first end up at the library, so you could have parents and caregivers help children draw a map from their house to the library. There's a lot of pointing in this story. Go that way. No, they'll go this way, that the kids can act out. The guys set up a tent, so if you have a small tent available, you could set it up as a play structure for kids to play in afterwards. Some kids might not have ever seen a tent. The characters make a campfire and toast s'mores, of course, so you could have some of the components like marshmallows or graham crackers as a snack at the end of your program. You could even make a fake campfire with some wood and a lantern wrapped in orange and red paper flames to pretend to roast your s'mores. Learning a new skill is part of exploring new interests, and for this age range, learning a new skill covers just about everything. But I love the idea of introducing yoga to children of young ages. This book is written in Spanish, so please excuse my horrible pronunciation. Abece de Yoga para Niños by Teresa Ann Power. There isn't any storyline, it's just illustrations and decorations for different yoga poses. And even though they are in Spanish, you could look them up in another resource to learn how to do them. I think kids would love these, as a lot of them are imitating animals. There's even the happy baby pose and the Jack in the Box, which kids will also love doing. If you have a yoga instructor in your area, you could get them to come in and lead children and parents through the poses. And of course, you can invite a native Spanish speaker to read these. A lot of yoga is about your breathing technique, so you could pair this yoga book with Frog's Breathtaking Speech, How Children and Frogs Can Use the Breath to Deal with Anxiety, Anger, and Tension by Michael Chiswick and Sarah Peacock. It's another title I have just discovered. In this story, Frog is anxious and sad and scared because he has to give a speech in front of the school. So all his friends teach him how to use special breathing techniques to control and help with these feelings. Kids will love learning how to breathe like a crocodile and roar like a lion. This woodchopper breath will also be fun for them to do. The front matter of the book contains a guide for how to use it for educational instruction, and the back matter has these instructions and tips for each breath. These titles are ones you can incorporate into several storytime programs by just going over a few yoga poses each time and reiterating the breathing techniques. Learning how to ride a bike is another very important new skill that's addressed in Together We Ride by Valerie Brawling. This beginning picture book has only 1 or 2 words per page, but you can expand upon the text by asking your kids what all they see in the picture spread. Some of them have a lot of background going on to pay attention to. As you do when you first learn how to ride a bike, the little girl falls at one point. So this title opens up a great opportunity to talk about when that happens, what you do, that it's okay to cry, but then you get back up and try again. Learning a new language is another skill you can use in programming. These first words or books are available in several languages: Japanese, Spanish, Mandarin, French, Italian, and English. The English one would be a good to have in your collection for those who are learning English as a second language. All of the titles in this series use the same words, so you can have physical examples of as many of the items as possible to pass around and let your kids play with them. There are also several things that work well for sensory time, such as branches from trees, some leaves, sand, etc. For the cat, you could use a stuffed animal and so on. Each book ends with goodbye, so you can bring that back over multiple story times. Your kids can learn to say goodbye in several languages. Con Polo by Jimmy Fallon and Jennifer Lopez is a new title to teach Spanish that is so cute. It has rhyme and repetition and presents Spanish terms in a very accessible and fun way. These opening pages start with, "Do you want to go to the beach?" or "Go to la playa con Polo." And it follows with explaining Polo rhymes with froyo. It's so much fun. For an extra activity with this book, Polio builds with blocks, so you can pull these out for kids to play with during playtime. You can do programs that talk about the importance of using your own imagination this year. Sunflower Line by Kevin Hanks is a great title to use to talk about shapes, in this case, a circle. The text has a call and answer feature. It constantly asks some version of, "Can you see it?" and has ways to incorporate action and movement, such as the line running and then stopping to smell a flower. You can see if your kids notice that the sun, flower, and line are all drawn with a circle, but given different details to make them unique. For a craft project, you can give them circles of different sizes and colors and let them make whatever they want. And this one would give you another chance to incorporate that lion's breath breathing technique too. Batman and Batgirl Unite, a book about teamwork by Michael Dahl, uses a layout where you can see the kids on one side doing something from their life, and then the opposite side shows how they are imagining their superhero sides, doing something more superhero-y. It has great back matter that discusses suggestions for how to talk about teamwork, art suggestions, and drawing ideas, and 2 different game ideas. One with a parachute and a beach ball, like we've already talked about, and a hula hoop game where you stand in a circle and join hands and try to move the hula hoop around your body without touching it with your hands. That activity, of course, would be best for a little bit older kids, say 3 to 5. Dream You'll Be by Joseph T. Garcia shows children dreaming about all the things they can be when they grow up. So there are lots of activities your kids can pretend to be doing: flying like a superhero, surfing, walking a high wire. So you could tape a line on the floor for an activity or place pieces of colored paper in a line. If you have a dress-up box, this title would be perfect to give kids free play time to dress up with, or you can tell kids ahead of time to dress up as what they want to be when they grow up. An artist is one of the professions, so that makes a natural tie-in to having a creative session with paper and crayons. Super Manny Cleans Up by Kelly DePiccio is the story of 2 friends having superhero adventures together. They have a refrain of, "We are," and in this spread, it's tough, that your kids can repeat. I particularly love this page because they're fighting the veggie monsters, so a lot of kids will relate to thinking vegetables are terrible. You can use this as a fun art activity afterward. Just give them some paper and crayons or markers and have them make up their own drawings of monster vegetables. During the story, Maddie and Gertie realize that the turtles they were imagining as giant turtles from outer space have a problem. One of them has a plastic ring around his neck, so they identify a real-world problem, not an imaginary one this time. The pond, as was the rest of their park, has trash all over it. So this title is a great way to introduce social responsibility to young kids, that when they see a problem, in this case, trash, they have the power to find a solution and implement it. The characters make a backyard fort at one point out of a stick and some blankets. So you could use a sheet or blanket to make an indoor fort with chairs for kids to play in after the story. For another activity, you could scatter out toys and blocks and things to have your kids help pick it all up, like Manny and Gertie do with the trash. Make it fun by incorporating some music, singing a song, or letting them dance around while they're picking things up. We couldn't talk about imagination without talking about Pete the Cat. In Pete the Cat's Groovy Imagination by Kimberly and James Dean, Pete is trying to improve a bad day. It's raining, he's stuck inside, and he's bored. He finds a cardboard box and turns it into all kinds of fun things: a rocket ship, a submarine, a race car. So this is another fun way to use plain cardboard boxes, and we all have plenty of them around to show kids how to turn them into something fun. Pete the Cat books are also very colorful and bright, so you can talk about colors and even introduce to them mixing colors to make purple and green and orange. This concludes our early literacy summer library program training. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have learned lots of fun things you can do with this age group as we've talked about this year's theme of Adventure Begins at your library. There is so much more that you can do, from talking about adventures and traveling to new places, going on road trips and exploring outdoors, learning new skills such as like yoga or how to speak another language. And kids always need to learn from us how important the power of their imagination is. And this year's theme gives you a great opportunity to emphasize that. I would love to hear your feedback. So here's my contact information. Let me know if you try some of the ideas or if you have success with something totally different I didn't mention. I would love to hear from you. Thank you.